complex numbers powers of I. This is my favorite part of imaginaries because there is a pattern. So we already know I is the square root of negative 1, and I squared is negative 1, because when you square the square root, you get negative 1. So what would I3 be? Well, that's just I times I squared. And so that would be I times negative 1, which is negative I. And I to the fourth would be I squared times I squared, which is negative 1 times negative 1, which is 1. So I is I, basically. And then I squared is negative 1, I cubed is negative I, and I4 is 1. So what would I5 be? Well, I5 is just I4 times I, and I4 is 1, so it's just I. And I6 would be I4 times I squared, and I4 again is 1, so it's just I squared. And then this would be I cubed, and this would be I to the fourth again, which is 1. And then this would be I, and then I squared again, and then I cubed, and then 1. Every time you have a power of 4, a multiple of 4 for the exponent, it'd be 4, 8, 12. Those are all going to be 1, because I8 would just be I4 times I4. And I12 would be I4 times I4 times I4. And they're all 1s. So 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And so each time you go to the next row, it's just going to be I13, which would be I12 times I. And that is 1, which gives you I. So it's just that same pattern repeating. You get I, negative 1, negative I, 1. And that's all you have to remember then. We know that I4 is 1. So you just have to remember that I is I squared is negative 1, and I cubed is negative I. And if you forget it, what's I times negative 1? Negative I. That's it. So, if it repeats every 4, then when we divide it, the remainder will actually tell us what the exponent is. So if we take 81 and divide it by 4, we get a remainder of 1, which makes this one I to the 1, which is just I. So whatever the remainder is, that's our exponent. So 4 into 80. There's no remainder. So it would be the same thing, I to the 0, which is 1. That's all you have to do. So what's 4 divided by 22? That's 4 into 20 is 5. So we have a remainder of 2. So that's really I squared, which is negative 1. Nice and clean, right? What if you have a negative? Well, it's the same thing. 4 into 23 would be 5. So we have a remainder 3. So this is I to the negative 3. So why does it work the same for it? Well, let's look at it. This is 1 over I to the 23rd. And we know that I to the 23rd is I cubed. And then bringing it back would be I to the negative 3. Same thing. Okay? So it doesn't matter. You take 23, convert it to negative 3. It works the same. So now that we have that, we can flip it and then simplify. And we know that I cubed is negative I. We can go back up there. And that would give us 1 over negative I. Now we don't want an imaginary on the denominator. So what do we have to do? Simplify it. So we multiply top and bottom by I. So that's I over negative I squared, which is I over 1, which is just I, because negative 1 gives us 1. That's it. You could also get creative right from the beginning. Is 1 over I 24. Oops, I'm way ahead of myself here. 23. And so we know that multiples of 4 will give us real numbers. So if we multiply this by I, that would give us 24. So this is I over I 24. And 24 divided by 6 has a remainder of 0. So we know that that becomes 1, which gives us just I now. Same answer. Alright, so you can always get creative if you want. You just have to remember that whole for thing. Every for it repeats. So give these a shot. Got every situation you could run into. Try them. So you should have got a remainder of 0, which means it's 1. And then here we get a remainder of 1, so we have 1 over I. And then we can't have a denominator with I, so we need to rationalize, which gives us I over, sorry, I'm supposed to use a negative here, negative I squared, which is negative I over 1. Remember, that's the negative 1 again, which gives us negative I. And you could also just have multiplied by I cubed, and that would give us I cubed over 1, and I cubed is negative I. So whichever method you used, you should still end up with negative I. And then this one is 1 over I squared, and we don't have to do any division because it's less than 4. I squared is just negative 1, so the answer is negative 1. And that's powers. So if you notice on our answers, we're getting I, negative I, negative 1, negative I, and 1. You just have to figure out what it is.